welcome to the MHR podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Alice.
Alice, I wanted to talk about something really specific this week. I thought we usually talk about lots of like top level stuff, broad sweeping things, but MHR did an event last week, and it was a brilliant event, and it was a DisruptHR event. Have you ever heard of these?
Oh, I've seen the name floated around a bit,
and I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about what it was for, and kind of, all the content of it, really. It was, because it's everything this podcast also tries to do, right, and does well, which is it discussed the world of work through a HR lens.
Right.
And it really, it was a really disruptive, in a positive way, thought-provoking, inspiring set of talks across a broad range of topics that affect HR professionals. And for MHR to host it was a real privilege, and also it's exactly what we want to be doing, leading these conversations and debates like we're doing this podcast. And I thought it was really worth reflecting on and discussing with you and getting your thoughts about the event.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it was hosted in Nottingham, was it?
Yeah, we did it. It was last week. So, I'll start first. What is DisruptHR? So, and the reason why MHR is so keen to be involved, right? So, I think DisruptHR is like a global incentive, right? They have about 37 countries across the world that host DisruptHR events, and I think that's like 158 cities that these events happen in. And Nottingham was one of them. And we said, right, we want to do this. We want to bring this to Nottingham. We want to drive this kind of thing. And the reason why they're so interesting is they take on a really fun format. So for the night, we brought on 14 speakers.
Okay.
And all of them have 5 minutes each.
Oh, just 5 minutes?
Just 5 minutes,
okay.
Which actually, when you're sat talking, you actually realise it can be quite a long amount of time. But for when you're talking about broad topics or something you're passionate about, that's not a long time to actually get your point across.
No,
right?
I mean, we try it in 15 minutes in these podcasts.
And we never really manage
No,
it.
we never do. That's down to you, though, let's be honest.
That's mainly me, just so passionate about it. So we had 14 speakers, all of which had 5 minutes. And the whole point of DisruptHR is you have your 5 minutes to get your point across and do a really engaging talk or presentation on your topic that is relevant in the HR world. However, you have 20 slides and you have 15 seconds on a slide.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
you have to be really good at presenting and getting your point across. And the idea is it's fast, quick fire rounds throughout the evening. So it's an evening event.
Right.
And we got the 14 speakers to come in and pick their topics. We created a really good lineup of really engaging talks. And the audience basically were given these quick fire, like mini TED Talk style things on some really interesting topics. And I thought it was amazing. I thought it was brilliant. And it was great to get all those kind of 14 different perspectives, because they were all industry experts or HR business leaders from around the region. And it was a really, really fascinating event. And I think there was a lot that everyone who went there could learn a lot from, but also a lot that we could learn a lot from by holding those discussions about the world of HR that we try to practice as a company. So I wanted to reflect on it.
Interesting. So you mentioned there that the audience, it kind of was a bit of a TED Talk for them. What sort of members in the audience did we have?
Oh, it was a really good mix. So there was a lot of different ages, and there was lots of people from different organisations in Nottingham. But the target audience was really HR professionals.
Oh, okay.
And you're talking probably more like management and upper. So people who are leading in their field, who are both providing talks, but also the audience are people who are like, yeah, this affects me. These affects the way I have to work and what I'm trying to bring into an organisation.
Right.
So and it was a full room. It was a real, we had a venue in the heart of town, Antenna in Nottingham. Really good venue for it. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, open doors, 7 till like 9 as an event, full, really engaged audience. And I think it was a testament to, if you talk about things that people really care about or move them, or something they want to really drastically affect and change in the world of work, people will turn up and they'll engage and they'll hold these discussions. So we had 14 speakers, right? I'll go through them because actually I think they all deserve a credit. They all deserve a shout out for who they are and what they did. And I think it really shows the broad breadth of topics that we kind of presented, right? I've actually shared with you over here all the slides that we had.
Can't wait to hear.
So the first talk we had was a woman called Jane Harper, who is the managing director at Harper Recruitment, and she talked about the ongoing battle between remote work and office work.
Oh, we speak about that a lot, don't we?
Which we spoke about on the podcast. So I found that really interesting. It was a really engaging talk, and she actually actually had, I think, one of the biggest challenges of starting the evening and setting the pace. She nailed it, spot on time, really engaging talk, engaging slides, and got a really good response. Then we went to a speaker called Hit and Bat, and he was the founder of Be Great Thinking, and he did an incredibly engaging presentation on self-love is your superpower, where he did a lot of affirmations at the start. Everyone was standing up talking about it, and then he talked about the value of that kind of awareness of that, and that was really well received, really engaged. So already you can see that these are really kind of lively talks.
Yeah,
these are all
really engaging.
5 minutes each. We had Lynn Holdsworth, who is a colleague of ours here at
one and
MHR,
only.
Our head of our academy, and she did a really great presentation on how to nurture the talent of the future, which is brilliant. It meant a lot to us because that's something we do.
And it would be relatable for every business, wouldn't it, looking
100%.
at the job market now?
100%. So that was really well engaged with, and I think all the audience there really appreciated looking at our perspective and our approach to this and how we do it. So yeah, really good. We had a gentleman called Paul Sands, who is an employment lawyer at Eversheds, Sutherland.
Right.
Who, and again, what we thought would be a popular topic: responsible AI in the workplace.
Oh, it's always that word that comes up, isn't it?
I know, right? So, what are the threats? What are the concerns? What are the myths? How should AI be utilised and captured responsibly? What are the opportunities for it? Again, a very big topic to condense down into 5 minutes. But again, he did an incredibly engaging talk, and I actually know he expressed interest in coming in and joining us in this podcast.
Oh, that would be fab, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so we'll see if we can get him in as well. We had a talk on productivity. So a speaker called Lena Thompson, who is the Future of Work and Human Design Consultant.
That's quite a title, isn't it? I like that one.
Yeah. They discussed their new productivity paradigm, so working less and achieving more.
Which ultimately, actually, every business probably should be looking at as a topic, isn't it?
We talk about it every week, right?
Yeah.
How do we work smarter? How do you connect people? How do you unburden them from admin processes and make them smarter? So really engaging discussion as well. Again, she gave some really kind of key tips and her kind of 3 keys to how we can make decisions and empower ourselves. So fascinating talk, really well received. And then we had Tony Brooks, who is a leadership psychologist from the Leadership Training Workshop. So he did a session called Escaping the Mind Traps of Survival Thinking.
Ooh, okay, this sounds interesting.
I latched onto a couple of things he said, mainly because he talked about killer bees and ants and how they kill things. And it was fascinating.
I'll have to go and find a couple of those notes.
I've shared the slides. I mean, actually, these videos will be available to watch as well. But again, a really, really thought-provoking, but also really, really inspiring talk, really engaging. So, yeah.
Sounds like he took a different take on things as well.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think it was very accessible, but the way he used his examples were really helpful to kind of get you into context of why he was thinking about, why are we behaving the way that we do.
Yeah.
And then we had a really thought-provoking and a really impactful presentation by Olivia Swift, who is the founder and managing director of Lotus Maternity. And she actually said to us, I've toned this down again because I don't want to come across too blunt, but she provided a really powerful presentation and a talk on why women shouldn't be afraid to provoke, dare, and embrace their inner alpha. And that was focusing on, holding the debate and the conversation about why we need to consider and be considerate of more support for women in maternity and post-maternity and coming back to work and the support they need, and the scary statistics out there about, the suicide rates of people coming back into work post-maternity.
Right.
And
so it's
how
just
we need to address those problems.
opening the mind a little bit more then.
Absolutely. I definitely learnt a lot from that, as did a lot of the audience. Fantastic talk.
Brilliant.
All of that's happening in the first half.
Goodness me, that's just the first half.
There's a lot of topics, right? And then we go into, for the second half, again, because it's all quick fire, this is all done by 8:30, right? Rob Day, who is the chairman and founder of Blueprint Interiors, who did a talk on the evolving nature of the workplace.
Oh, I feel like we touch a fair few topics maybe
again,
there.
Really interesting because that's what we talk about a lot in terms of, what are the trends, what are the expectations of people working, how should we be working, how do we meet in with that cultural demand? And it, again, really well received presentation there. Luckily at MHR, we had another speaker from our organisation there as well. So Hannah Jaycock, who we've had on this podcast.
We have, yes.
Research director here, did a discussion on why should we maintain skills when AI can do it for you.
Also another topic on AI there then.
I know, right? Well, it's a hot topic and we know people are going to want to talk about it. But
it's involved in our day-to-day life now, isn't it?
it was a really appropriate angle and different from what we had before in the evening, especially looking at the skills and the talent base there. So, yeah, I think we'll absolutely ask Hannah, see if she can elaborate on that for us.
I think it'll be a good
podcast.
one. Yeah, mate, why maintain skills when AI can do it for you?
Right.
It'd be really good to dive into that maybe one week.
It busts the myth, doesn't it, of AI replacing jobs, but actually how does it support your role?
Yeah, that's the main topic.
Really good.
Brilliant.
Rhiannon Rees was the next speaker, and she's a leadership coach, facilitator for Blue Grape Talent.
Right.
And she did how to break the cycle of imposter syndrome and perform at your best. Really engaging, really personal.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah. Something that we can all probably relate to, can't we? We've all been in those instances.
Yeah, and it looks a lot of things, and I think that was really well received. I mean, they all were.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sounding like a broken record.
No,
here,
but I'm hoping the audience all took away some notes as well and took it back to their business.
So I was lucky enough to kind of compare the event. So I was sat on the side as I was introducing these speakers, and you can see the audience engage with them, and they're all leaning in, they're all engaging, they're all responding, they're all the focus was fantastic, and I think that's testament to these speakers and how they talk these topics, and also how relevant it was to that audience and our audience and the world of work. We want to be holding these discussions, right?
Yeah, and something like DisruptHR with this sort of format, you can see how engaging it is.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, you're not just sat almost watching, but actually having to interact, having to think for yourself. So it seems a brilliant format.
Yeah. So Peter Else was up next with, I think it was Layla. And they were from Cozy Direct. They talked about how they're like a family affair approach, and they're friends in low places. So as a business, how they tackle their approach, why they're so, as a result, in demand for jobs and their culture. So it was very much a culture-driven conversation on why they've had the successes they've had because of the way they work and the way they look at things.
Oh, so a bit of a reflective type
which I think ties in nicely to a lot of conversations we've had about retention and culture and building in an environment that we think is in line with people's values. So a highly engaging talk, and they, a takeaway from that is that they've got 2 fantastic goats.
Oh, do they?
I think a part of their workforce.
Bit different.
Pretty
cool.
Brilliant, really engaging talk as well. And then the last 2 that we had for the evening were Richie Maddock, who was the founder and managing director of Lynchpin Associates, on a talk called Mind the Gap, which was about employer intention versus employer experience.
Now that's a topic we've definitely spoke about.
And I know Richie's definitely talked about coming in and talking to us about it, so we're going to get him in to talk about it.
Love that. Can't wait for that one. Great.
We're going to ask him. I think he's keen. Really engaging, fantastic talk. Again, really well presented, but it's something that we talk about a lot, right? About how do we get what we want as a business, but how do we reflect that in a positive employee experience?
Yeah, and a challenge for HR professionals all over.
Exactly. And then in the evening, it was one of our last speakers was Sarah Spencer, founder and chief ecosystem officer, which I really like the title of, with a talk, Think Like a Tree. Which I was intrigued with immediately, and she's talked about rooted leaderships, cultivating regenerative processes inspired by nature. So how can nature inspire the way we take leadership approaches and managerial process? Really well received.
Bit out the box as well.
Exactly, different. But that's the point, right? That's why we're on this podcast now, right? That's why we talk about these things. We know these things matter to people, but it's how we present them to people and how we hold those debates and discussions. And this event did that brilliantly.
Yeah.
So if you aren't already aware of DisruptHR, I do recommend that people look it up. There are events happening all over the world. I know we're keen to be hosting more. It was a privilege for us to do so, and it was important because we like to lead this debate and hold these people in and challenge these norms.
And to have a variety of people in the room as well.
Exactly.
Because, like I say, it seems like we had excellent presenters during the day. Sounds really engaging throughout the whole evening. But hopefully it'll open more doors and gain a bit more interest from others around.
And there's good intentions all around. One of the many important reasons why we're there as well, that we supported local incentives. So there was a local Nottingham-based charity called Improving Lives who do fantastic work supporting people with mental health issues in Nottingham. Were supported. All the ticket proceeds of the event went towards that charity.
Brilliant.
Josh Woods from Improving Lives came and gave us a presentation. It was really moving, it was nice, and it showed the value of the work that they do, and it fed nicely into the theme of the event and why we're here to help people.
Yeah, all for a
right?
good cause, definitely.
So,
and I think a couple of the graduates at MHR, they're doing work with Improving Lives in their garden, so I'm sure a couple of the proceeds will be going to there.
So I know this is very different from a typical kind of episode, but I felt like we had to talk about it because it talks about everything we try to do here, right?
Yeah.
All of these topics we kind of talked about in one way or another, and actually having business leaders come in and talk to the public, to a captive HR audience, and give their really fresh perspective and takes was inspiring.
Definitely.
And it gave us a lot to learn, and it helped us hold these discussions, which we think are really important.
Definitely. I think if you're not discussing, and like I say, a variety of topics that were covered in a very short space of time, but if we're not talking about it, we're not going to progress, are we? No. We're not going to get us thinking out the box, so we're not going to start considering maybe gaps that we might have missed. So it's good to hear from what I can say is the experts in their own fields talk about the topic and, like I say, bring that knowledge into the conversation and hopefully spark a little bit of thought-provoking for other businesses.
It was really well received, and I think everyone was quite kind of inspired by it. It made me think about a load of the ways we work and how we can support those. It made me think about what we try to communicate to people from MHR and why actually, are we saying these things and how we can support them. And actually, I think there's a lot to learn from that in a really positive way. And I know it was really important for us as an organisation to be there because we wanted to be shown to be supporting all of these incentives, these perspectives, and actually how we can help keep that debate going. It's important, right?
Definitely. And I think you mentioned that you're able to watch a couple of the presentations. Is that right?
So we filmed the event. We were hosting this on behalf of DisruptHR. So I would recommend that people go to DisruptHR, find out more. We will make sure our content's available.
Yeah.
But again,
go read up about it. If you say they're global, it'll be interesting what else they've done in other countries and what sort of presentations they've had.
We're always here, right? Like we will, if get in touch on our website or engage with the podcast on the comment. If you want to hear more, if you want to see more, get in touch. If we can connect you with any of these fantastic business leaders and speakers that we had at the event, that's what we'll do. We're here to kind of help drive the conversation about what HR is and where it's moving, right?
Yeah, world of work.
Yeah, world of work.
It is
indeed. So, brilliant. Yeah, so there you go. That's my overview of the event.
Brilliant. You must be busy.
It was very busy. But it was a fantastic evening.
Yeah.
Really important. Glad we did it, and hopefully we'll be doing a few more in the future.
Yeah, I really hope so. It'll be fantastic to have more in the future.
So we'll hopefully, that means we'll get a few special guests coming in to join us on the podcast soon.
I hope
we will
so.
talk about a few of these topics. But if you were at the event and you want to comment on this, please do.
Yeah.
If you want to hear more about it, or if you want to hear more from the speakers, just get in touch. We'd love to build that bridge and keep those conversations going. But until then, we'll be back next week, and we'll be probably talking about a few more of these topics that have been talked in DisruptHR.
Absolutely. Very interesting topics there.
Yeah. I've been Andy.
And I'm Alice.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.